We are now officially past the Christmas season in the NBA, and perhaps upon the most important and exciting time in the NBA calendar, trade season. So I want to break down a couple of reports we have regarding the Sixers and a couple of players that are involved in or on their team that are interested in. I have two particular reports that I do want to break down in this one. There's a couple other housekeeping things that I want to touch on with the Sixers, with Joel Embiid's injury and kind of the state of the team to wrap things up. But without further ado, let's dive fully into it. And I do want to kick things off with the first report today. This is coming from Mark Stein overall in his Substack here. And this, once again, is regarding Zach Lavine and the Sixers. So Mark Stein writes, quote, "The 76ers continue to be mentioned as a potential suitor for Chicago's Zach Lavine. Based on my conversations at the G League Showcase, I continue to believe they shouldn't be. League sources say that Philadelphia, if it indeed makes an in-season trade with the assets received in the Harden Halloween deal that sent James Harden to the LA Clippers, is still prioritizing a two-way player, as well as a move that does not limit its future optionality. Lavine is a former All-Star whose offensive capabilities are unquestioned, but the 3 full seasons left after this one on the 5-year, $215 million contract he landed from the Bulls in July 2022 have helped to curtail Lavine's market. So not a huge surprise the Sixers continue to be mentioned in the Zach Lavine sweepstakes, and I do want to put this on the table that I believe this is much more of people connecting the dots as the Sixers being a potential team that makes sense rather than the Sixers actually going out and being that interested in Zach Lavine. We continue to hear this phrase thrown about this two-way player that the Sixers desire. Daryl Morey has said it himself. There's been plenty of reports that have run with that exact terminology, saying a two-way player, which to me basically means not Zach Lavine. Like, Zach Lavine is a guy who there's no question about what an elite scorer he is. I frankly think he gets a little bit of a bad rep in these conversations about what he actually is as a player. He's incredibly elite as a shooter, incredibly elite as an off-ball mover. He's a guy that can create with or without the ball. Just a guy that can get it done on the offensive end. There should be no doubts about it. There are games where he can go nuclear and take over a game. He's dropped 50 points against the Sixers before. He's done it against other teams. He has a 50-point game this season already. But there are questions about his overall kind of fit within a construct, his buy-in to a team. And to me, the biggest warning sign is how desperate the Bulls seem to trade him. Now, I obviously understand the contract is the biggest part of it. And to put this fully on the table with what Zach Lavine is making, he's making $40 million this season. He'll be making $43 million next season, $46 million in 25-26, and then has a $48.9 million player option in 26-27, and you have to imagine he's taking that. And by the way, if you look at the bottom of this contract notes, he has a 15% trade bonus as well, so those numbers will be going up if and when a deal actually goes down. So that is a lot to swallow. And we've heard from the Sixers all these conversations throughout the year about the flexibility, about this cap space plan where they want to enter the offseason being really the only team in the NBA with a certified superstar in Joel Embiid, with a rising star in Tyrese Maxey, who already has a blank check attached to his name, and it will likely depend on whether he makes an all-star game, an all-NBA team, and all those standards that impact what a max contract actually means. That so often those phrases gets thrown around as he got a max contract. But max contracts mean different things to different players. That teams can offer you a certain amount of money based on your accolades and your what you've done on the floor, whether that's an all-star game, whether that's an all-NBA team. There's so many stipulations that dictate what a player can actually make, which is why a one max contract is not kind of a flat thing. So for Tyrese Maxey specifically, this was a little bit of more of a two-way street than I think a lot of people acknowledge. That a lot of people getting caught up in the Sixers not giving Maxey a long-term deal in the offseason, and that was for two reasons. For starters, that it helps them with flexibility, that there is a little, loophole in the salary cap of the NBA where the Sixers can sign another player from an opposing team and then sign Maxey and basically have more room with the cap. The intricacies of this have gotten more complicated with the new CBA, but that is the basis of it. When you have bird rights and when it is in your own player, you have more flexibility in the way you can sign it. So it made sense from the Sixers' perspective to wait until this point in time where you can make sure you're building the roster as you see fit. And then from Tyrese Maxey's side of thing, that he did not have these high accolades attached to his name. He's yet to break onto the all-star scene, and he absolutely has been playing like he's deserved it all season. I believe he should be in the all-NBA conversation because I just don't think there's been 6 guards better than him. Is he the best guard in the NBA? I'm not saying that by any means. You can throw the Luka Doncic, the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. There's plenty of guys that are in the mix, but 5 of them, 6 of them? I mean, we're talking about Dre Young, DeJounte Murray, guys like that have made All-NBA teams before. I think Tyrese Maxey is every bit that quality of talent, and he continues to prove it throughout the season. So it made sense for Tyrese to put this off and wait till this season because there's going to be a steeper price tag attached to it. So it does work for both sides. But for this concept of having this flexibility, trading for Zach Lavine essentially ruins that entire plan. Now, you can make the argument, and I personally feel this way, that it's more valuable to have a player in your hand under that control rather than the hope that one comes. But that only makes sense if Zach Lavine is your guy. And I don't know if he's done quite enough to make me believe that. That I like Zach Lavine. Once again, I think I'm a little bit higher on him than a lot of people, than the perception. Feels like he's a pretty polarizing player, that there's people who think he's the next best thing, and there's guys that think he absolutely sucks. I'm definitely in the middle of that. I trend more towards that he is a very good player, and I think a little bit misunderstood in the context. But still, my greatest fear with this Sixers team, and what I believe is ultimately going to be their default at this point as the roster is currently constructed, is who's going to be the guy guarding Jason Tatum? Who's going to be the guy guarding Giannis Antetokounmpo when we hit those points in the playoffs? Because it's going to happen. That if the Sixers want to be a playoff and championship caliber team, that you have to be able to beat teams like the Celtics, like the Bucks. When you think about a Celtics roster filled up with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Derek White, these are three guys that all have to have legitimate high-level defensive attention to them played on an every possession basis. I just don't love how the Sixers match up with it right now. And it only gets worse when you have a backcourt of Zach Lavine and Tyrese Maxey. This is not to say that Zach Lavine is not a great player. I honestly think he is. I think he will find himself back in an all-star game in some NBA uniform. But I just don't see it being the Sixers. And I think you're really selling your soul for this offensive production in a way that this team might not be the right move. Now, if the price point comes so low, then maybe it is worth it. If it is a potential Tobias Harris and a first-round pick gets you Zach Lavine, I feel like you have to pull the trigger on that because that leaves you enough flexibility to still do things over the course of the season. And as I mentioned, this concept of having one player physically a part of the team and under team control, to me, is more valuable than the hope of other guys coming over. Joel Embiid doesn't have the most stellar track record as a recruiter of a team, so I kind of would believe that as well. But that has to mean that Zach Lavine is your guy, and who knows what's going on between Daryl Morey's ears right now. Now, another guy that I did want to talk about, and I kind of mentioned him there, is Tobias Harris. So Tobias Harris has had an up-and-down career with these Sixers thus far. He's had stretches, and even this season has played some of his worst basketball for periods of time. But it looks like the light is finally at the end of the tunnel for that deal. And other teams are noticing as well. In fact, Shams Charania reported that the Detroit Pistons are actively looking to trade for a four-man, and his quote was, "I'm told some names to keep an eye on are Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, Tobias Harris, and Miles Bridges." So a lot of varying names there. We've heard the OG and the Pascal Siakam rumors all over this season, that they've been attached to the Sixers in similar ways to Zach Lavine with this. But Tobias Harris is an interesting name. For starters, that he's played in Detroit before. We know he has familiarity with the franchise. And the Pistons, frankly, could use all the help that they can get. Now, I do think this would be a short-sighted move on the Pistons' part, that we do know that they are coming off setting the record for 27 losses in a row, the most in NBA history. There is the little caveat next to it of the Sixers having 28 consecutive losses, but that spanned over 2 seasons. 26 was the previous record, also by the Sixers, that was recently snapped. So who knows? I'm rooting for the Pistons to keep going at this point, and it's especially, I guess, frustrating or concerning, or however you want to word it, that this Pistons team straight up is not designed to be this bad. That Monty Williams is the highest paid coach in NBA history. Cade Cunningham is legitimately good at basketball. Jaden Ivey is a talent worth watching. Ausar Thompson is a guy that I do believe in as an NBA player. Jalen Duren, very good. They have guys that they just simply should not be as bad as they are, but it straight up is that way. I don't think Tobias Harris is the solution to that. I think that would be a very short-sighted move on their side, that yes, he would make them better than they are right now, but is that what ultimately solves your direction from Detroit? Probably not. Now, does that mean that from the Sixers standpoint, if they're calling saying we want Tobias Harris right now and we will give you a young piece, I'm absolutely doing that. The Sixers should be working that phone, making that a point, but I don't know if that makes as much sense to me as I think the Shams report does. Frankly, I don't love any of those names for the Pistons, and I think, unfortunately, the brutal reality is they're going to have to kick away this season, swallow it, and pick up the pieces from there. You got to evaluate which guys are worth keeping around, which guys are not, and this should be the rock bottom moment for the Detroit Pistons, but you got to play 82 games regardless. That there is no easy solution to this. You got to dig yourself out of this starting next season. So I think for the most part is a lost season for Detroit. I think they have to look at it this way. If they get overeager and want to throw us a massive package for Tobias Harris, sign me up. But I don't know if I truly think that is the case. And the last piece that I did just want to touch on here is, of course, Joel Embiid. Embiid set to miss his second consecutive game. It was unfortunate that he was ruled out for Christmas. I'm getting this up right before the Magic game tonight. Embiid sitting out of that one as well. We know. First off, I'll say I hated all the ducking comments because I knew it was happening right away. That was a legitimate ankle roll that we saw in that Raptors game. The second I saw it happen, I literally said, I was like, I guarantee he toughs it out for the rest of this one, misses Christmas, and it's bad look optics for everyone ready to just pile on Joel Embiid, as a lot of the national voices and pundits like to do at times. So hopefully Joel Embiid gets better. There is no set real time frame for when he will return. I will say that I don't think it's a severe issue, that this is something that I do believe he will be back within the short term. Sixers have their next game against the Rockets on Friday, and then a back-to-back against the Bulls. I believe that's a home and home. So it'd be Friday, Saturday, and then Tuesday for that one. I think Tuesday, that game at home, would be one that I think he should have targeted. We'll see if it ultimately comes together. There hasn't been a ton of updates on what exactly the issue is. Obviously, we know it's an ankle sprain, but the severity of it, there have not been very many details released. Wouldn't shock me if they keep him out even a little bit beyond that, but not something that I think should be greatly worried about in the large scheme of things. Embiid has been very healthy this season, with the exception of this ankle injury. Missed a game here and there, but overall, the injury concerns to Joel Embiid, it's nice to see them kind of be put in the rear view. That these are just normal injuries that a guy deals with. He'll be fine. He'll be better than ever, and he has left himself plenty of wiggle room based on how he started the season and just how good he has been. So shout out to Joel. Rest up, and hopefully that ankle gets back soon. This Sixers team is obviously not the same without the MVP of the league, but still plenty to be excited about. Appreciate all you guys for watching this video. Make sure to smash that subscribe button, hit that like, and drop a comment to let me know your thoughts. What's your tune on Zach Lavine these days? Has it changed a little bit since we're seeing this Bulls success without him? Do you feel the exact same way? Are people overthinking of it? And how much does that contract scare you? Let me know it all, and I will talk with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.